The Anglican Church appears to be increasingly avoiding the word church when discussing the creation of new worshipping communities and congregations, a report has found. The Centre for Church Planting Theology and Research, church planting, I always sort of slightly raises my hackles when people say that, looked at the language used by 11 dioceses to describe new churches. The creation of a new church group is traditionally referred to as a church plant, but the report found that while 900 new churches had been started by the diocese in the past decade, none of them had used the phrase church plant. Instead, they'd used words like worship, congregation and community. Now, Connor Tomlinson is with me, as is Scarlett Mccgwire, political commentators both. Connor, I know you're a religious person, but for the Catholics rather than the Anglicans, does this matter?
I think it speaks to a broader symptom of a lack of faith of the British in themselves. So Professor David Starkey likes to joke that the Anglican Church is English Shintoism. It's the English worshipping themselves. The problem you have is when English culture is denigrated, especially in recent years when we seem to be blaming ourselves uniquely for historical injustices like racism and slavery, then the church falls in line with that. That's why the church adopted that strange acronym, UKMGMR, rather than BAME the other year, to say like UK minority ethnic global majority heritage. They're just jumping on whatever the latest woke intersectional bandwagon is. And then the other broader trend that's concerning is, if you notice the language Keir Starmer has used to mitigate the tensions between different groups in these riots, he keeps saying communities. We are liaising
I hate that. We're all part of the same community. Well, I don't want to be a different community to anybody else who lives in this country. I want to be part of the same community.
Well, that's the perception, though. It's that Britain is a kind of blank slate upon which different communities are added to add better and more diverse food groups or religious tolerance and things like that. And so the only time the host population's culture, their religion now, is acknowledged is when it is uniquely demonised for racism and for slavery. And so they feel the need to self-erase in fear of causing offence. But what this actually happens is, by saying they're a community, it means more ethnic and religious factions that have competing interests and will fight. And so the underlying tension which has driven the recent riots, I think this is a symptom of a broader trend, and things like this, things like social unrest, things like ethnic and religious tension will continue.
Dave in Southport has been in touch. He says, can I ask, if the Church of England are going to drop church, what are they calling it? Just England, says Dave in Southport. Well, as I've said, you know, these words like community, congregation, and so on as well. Claire says, good morning, Peter. It doesn't surprise me that the Church of England wants to stop calling their church a church. One of their archbishops doesn't believe in God, I believe. Of course, we don't want to offend other religions, do we? I'm not sure about that bishop, but I'm certainly interested in the evidence around that. Certainly, there are lots of questions around this. I mean, the Church of England is a very powerful but nonetheless quite small institution given the number of people who actually go every week. Scarlett, are you one of them, or are you like me, a hellbound heathen?
I'm afraid I'm a hellbound heathen, but I'm old enough to have been through decades of the church trying to make itself relevant. I mean that's always been the problem for the Church of England, and it used to be called the Tory Party at Prayer.
Yes.
And then during Mrs. Thatcher, there was a big falling out, and since then they haven't really known what they are, and it does seem that you have to go back to God. I mean, either the Church of England believes in God or it doesn't, and that's what it's all about. But you know, I disagree with Connor. I think he was getting far too sociological about all of it. I mean, I think that the Church of England is very diverse politically. I mean, it has everything from very, very conservative people. I mean, the whole campaign to get women bishops,
yes,
right, was...
The gay debate as well, with the Church of the Anglican Church across the world, as well as a very divisive debate. That's, and in England as well.
Absolutely, it's been divisive within England. But I mean, and also, you know, I mean, if we... stereotyping appallingly, you know, the black churches actually are different from the white churches in that the black churches tend to be against homosexuality, whereas the white churches are sort of more liberal. And that's in Britain itself, let alone around the country, around the world. So it is very difficult for the Anglicans to sort of... it's about being relevant, whereas the Catholics have always been a bit different and have not worried about relevance. I mean, partly because they've been so badly treated in the past, actually.
Connor?
I'd like to bring up a quote here from the Venerable Fulton Sheen, who said that if the Church weds themselves to the concerns of this age, they would be widowed in the next. So we shouldn't have a heart attack here, and I'm agreeing with Scarlett. They should go back to Scripture rather than try to chase the tail of modern politics. In terms of the Catholic Church not being as concerned, I wish that were the case, believe me. There are some schisms at the moment with Pope Francis taking some more progressive lines on inviting a cohort of transsexual sex workers to dinner within the Vatican, which was a strange thing. There was that whole kerfuffle, I think it was earlier in the year, it might have been late last year, about same-sex and transgender blessings in the church that caused a bit of division between the more progressive German bishops and the return to Latin Mass traditionalist types. So I think you're seeing a contention as to whether progress or tradition is the direction to go in many churches, and I will point out that the more traditional ones are the only ones with a thriving congregations. They might want to take note of that.